We are live. Thanks, Tewfik. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's great to see everyone. Today, we're joined by Johnny from Hopin. Obviously, as he needs no introduction, but just very briefly, Johnny is, of course, the founder and CEO of Hopin. It's one of the fastest growing companies on the planet, providing an online events platform where you can obviously create engaging virtual events like what we're doing today and connecting people around the world. I think the company is now valued at over 5 billion with a new raise led by A16Z and Andreessen Horowitz. And I think employee count is over 200 plus, Johnny. I don't know what the
we're 500 now.
All right. So you are double the number that I initially had. But thank you so much for joining us.
So much for having me.
I think to kick it off, I know you have friends in the audience, but also many who may not know your story as well. So, briefly, can you just share your journey and how you got to where you are today?
Absolutely. So, I graduated. So I can go a little bit earlier. So when I was younger, I used to do a lot of coding at home. I was born and raised in Australia. My parents had left Lebanon during the Civil War and migrated to Australia. And I was born there. I was doing basically until I hit 18. We were moving around. We moved from Australia to a little bit of time in the US, a little bit of time in Dubai. It's actually quite a bit. I spent my high school in Dubai, and then I studied in the UK. And always doing software engineering, but when I studied in school, I studied mechanical engineering. I did that for 4 years. In the second year of university, I did a small startup that I sold for a little bit of money. And I had parents and family who wanted me to finish university, so that's why I sold the startup. And they also, at the time, I thought it was a good idea to try the workforce. And so I took a job with a small management a management consultancy. I did that for 3 months and I hated it.
Oh,
yeah. And then I switched over to mechanical engineering, a mechanical engineering hardware company. Did that for 3 months and I hated it. And that's when I realized that, it's not that I just want to be an entrepreneur. That's what I wanted to do. So I wanted to build another app, but this time not sell it and make it a lot bigger. And just before I was about to do that, I got food poisoning that led to a really, really severe antibiotic stint that I was taking a lot of antibiotics, which led to a lot of autoimmune issues in the long term. And so for 2 years, I was stuck at home. I started working on Hopin in those 2 years because I couldn't network with people from my house. And I felt like events are amazing. And they connect people and they build your network and people should attend events. But I thought that there's got to be a way to make them a lot more accessible and still be valuable. Where a webinar is just like a one-way stream, I want people to be able to network at the events and do a lot of things that I wanted to do from my house when I was ill. So it took me about 1.5 years to recover. And I had finished building a basic MVP of the platform. And then when I had recovered, or I'm not fully recovered now, but I was good enough to raise money. I felt like that it was going to be a very fast-growing company because 3% of our attendees were converting into organizers, and it had a very, very high retention. Yeah. And so we thought, I thought that we needed to raise money and be as aggressive as possible. And from last year in January, February, we went from 3 people in the company to now we're over 500. And, we had, even before the coronavirus, we had, because we were doing hybrid events and normal events, but that conversion at 3% conversion rate was there. So we were doing a wait list at the time. We had around 40,000 people on the wait list. And it was really, really fast. So that's the journey that for me till today.
I love it. And I love that you were able to see those signs of product market fit. Before we get into that, though, you touched on some of the health issues that you've worked through, and I know you've talked about it a lot in other places. But do you think you've learned from conquering that challenge or trying to overcome that challenge? Because mentally, I'm sure it was difficult. I see you smiling about that. So like, can you just walk us through like how you approach that, and does it fuel you in any way?
100%. Before I got ill, I was definitely a lot more. I mean, I was very much happy-go-lucky in a way.
Hope you are.
Yeah, I not as much. I mean, I was just I felt like, nothing was. I wasn't thinking about as much of impact, and perhaps the wrong word to use, but the right word is also, I was a little bit selfish. I hadn't realized the pains that people go through. That life is short. That maybe I was very lucky because there's other people that have went through what I went through and maybe didn't get better, or you could. It was like a weird, nihilistic sort of realization that you could cross the road and get run over,
Yep.
and that's it, end game, And so my mindset very much changed after it to what way, like in this short life that we have, like what is the biggest way I can make an impact on people and make it for the better. And truly, that is it's been a complete change in my mindset. Absolutely. And I think if I hadn't, maybe I would have changed naturally by the time I'm 35, but I'm 35 or 40 or or whatever, have kids, and maybe you realize it then. But for me, it was definitely, you probably would have seen me in Bali making small tech apps, if it wasn't for the illness.
I love it. And I just think it's the story of grit, though, is something that I appreciate you sharing. You started talking a little bit about people and impact, and I want to dive into culture. You've had to build your own culture from the ground up at Hoppin. And let's start with like what does culture mean to you? I feel like a lot of people use it as a filler word. It's sort of an empty word. You guys are remote first. How do you think about culture? Why should even people care about this?
Culture is unbelievably important. I can start from 3 separate places. So let's start with what builds a culture. I've been thinking about that for a long time. When I first started growing the business, people used to say to me that really seasoned, let's say, executives or founders have done it before. The culture follows the founder. If you're working at a company where the founder takes a lot of holidays, you're probably going to be okay with taking a lot of holidays. You could see it with Tesla and Elon Musk. He leads from the top. He works incredibly hard, and people follow. And so that made a really, I've been trying to be very purposeful with what we've done. I think life and the company culture needs to be flexible. So at the moment, we're in a phase where perhaps the business, it's about winning the market. Is that we have a product, we had to build it very quickly and integrate and move very fast and hire a lot of people, etc. So right now, the pace is very, very high, and the culture is noticeable for that. But we're also flexible. We have an unlimited holiday policy, and we truly mean it. If someone wants to take 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks off at their own, we do a lot with equity. We do a lot with sharing. The point is, I want the people in the company, the culture has always been, for me, lots of delegation, because I don't know what I don't know, essentially. And you can't scale that fast if you don't trust people to delegate. And I think that's one thing that people, especially younger entrepreneurs, have a really hard time doing, or even younger managers, is delegating effectively.
Yeah.
And I think maybe it's ego or whatever it is, but it's one of the most important things in order to scale a business. And then in order to give the person the excitement, fear doesn't work as a tactic, but getting the profitability works as a tactic. So like for them seeing value in what they're doing for the team. So we do a lot on how do you make sure people have, if we, let's say, achieve this year, if we all work hard for this year, what do they get at the end of the year? Trying to make sure that people can see it and actually see it throughout the year. So bonuses, all these sort of things that we reward hard work. Because I'll say one thing, I know that, Silicon Valley culture and maybe a little bit of the PC culture is that we need to, working hard is not a good thing.
Yeah.
It's the only way to win, unfortunately. If you're trying to build a startup, you have to work hard. Yeah.
It's actually funny that you say that. I always say that the best advantage that a startup has is speed. And if you can move fast and iterate and put out more features than anyone else, you're well on your way to winning the market. So I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying. Thinking about the fact that you've scaled from 1 to 200 and now 500 in 12, 13, 14, 15 months, culture can get strained, I would argue. And so, have there been some objective moves on the ground that you guys have done to ensure that you're keeping that sort of culture that you want in place? As you bring more people on, as people join, they always say too, like one bad apple spoils the barrel. So how do you think about all that? How have you and the team thought about that more broadly?
There's a lot of intricacies around that question because as well, when you get to, so remote provides a very, very different world than the previous world. So I'll explain it like this. You get the best. So when you run a remote company for 500 people, you get the best let's say you get the best 2 hours of them every single day in those video calls. For example, what I mean is, let's say there's someone in the company who tends to be on, listen to music too loud, or click his pen all day, or, make uncomfortable jokes during lunchtime, etc. A lot of these cultural things that would be tolerated, you just don't see them. And it's a negative and a positive. You don't see them remotely. So what I mean by that is a remote company, in my opinion, is a lot faster, more productive, and but on the other hand, the positive 20% that you can get from like having a real strong friendship culture, oh, I really love the team I'm working in person. You can still get that online. We get it across the company, and we have amazing internal NPS scores, but you can get like that added, like, oh, my boss is my best friend, my colleague is my, I see him every Sunday and Saturday as well, because and so that you get less of online, but you also lose the negative 20 to 40 to 60% perhaps of like, I hate the people I'm working with. It greatly reduces it because you miss out on all the small intricacies of their attitude or whatever that you're not seeing for the rest of the day. And I haven't decided whether that's a positive or negative, but I just know that for business, it's a lot more efficient and better.
No, I like it. I think you're right. I mean, we sometimes try to bucket the world into these binaries, like, black or white, 0, 1, whatever. But you're right. I think there's trade-offs. And you just got to decide, like, do those trade-offs make sense or not? And I think you make a very compelling argument about, here's some of the things that are positive, and, here are some of the things that you potentially miss out on. Love it. We've talked about culture. Leadership is part of that. And I think leadership in crisis, or leadership on just the day-to-day basis, is an important part. You talked about Elon leading from the top, you leading from the top, and helping set that culture. So in terms of leadership, we've seen a lot of crises rock the world, the business world, the general world, COVID. There was obviously racial protests in the UK and the US last summer, the economy, and that, all that's just the macro level. So, when you think about crisis, what are the guiding themes that you consider from a leadership perspective? What are you doing or thinking to guide your team, whether it's a macro crisis, which hopefully I don't think COVID, let's talk about that certainly, but also, any business has its own mini fires or mini crises that are happening every day, whether that's in product sales, what other function. So, let's start from the top. What are your first principles when you approach a crisis of some sort and you're working with your team on it?
I think it depends. So if it comes to the solution, or we're a company that delegates a lot. So a lot of these fires. So we have like a ground up decision making process, which means like almost every decision isn't decided by is kind of collectively decided within the 2-3 owners of the problem, or one owner of the problem. Now, the thing that we ask is that they instill all the cultural points when working on it. So we have some major culture points at Hoppin, and the biggest one that is relevant to this, the biggest two are usually to a problem, are one, customer champions. So is this better for the customer or not? Black and white, that one, it has to be a yes. If it's not, then you can't do it. And the second one is low ego. This is more of an internal decision-making one, is we across the company, we ask for low ego people. It's like the number one thing we screen for. Competitive is very different from low ego in our opinion, but there's some intricacies there. But the point is, in solving it, in solving this issue, was it done in a way that didn't infer someone's ego? So what I mean by that is, if someone made a mistake pushing a product feature out too early, and it had previously said they should, someone had previously said they shouldn't, is the ego driving the decision to not fix it, if that makes sense, or defend it too much? Those are the sort of things that as a company we actually talk about, we scale for, because I think those are ego breaks companies.
Yeah. It's the bad apple in the barrel. How do you screen for that? I mean, is that in the interview process? It's hard to suss out. I always joke in startups, right? A lot of people can do really good in the interview, but you don't truly get to see them until they're on the inside. So how do you think about screening out some of these principles that you don't want as part of the company?
I think there's two things. I think it's the first one is we ask the questions. I think you can tell a lot in the interviews as well. I think when someone's faking that you ask them if you ask us strong enough questions, for example, tell me about a situation where X happened, or tell me it's a time where you disagreed with your colleagues. And if there's someone with potential high ego, they might there's little hints in there, I versus we, trying to pointing out the problem there, but giving them a pat on the back, even when they say that this was a problem of theirs. You get what I mean?
Yeah. We've seen it. We've all seen it.
Yeah. Like, it was my fault, but somehow you were the hero in the end. That sort of thing. And those are the sort of things that you can tell when they aren't trying to sell you. I actually always say in the company, the hardest position to interview, the easiest position to interview for that is in software engineering. The hardest position to interview that is sales, because they're supposed to be good salespeople. So I'm not sure if they've done a good job or not if they haven't sold us. But the point is, it's definitely there. And then the second part is the assimilation. It's like, okay, maybe that person came in, but I'm sure you've had that experience, or anyone who's joined multiple companies had that experience. It's like, a lot of the best people assimilate or become the environment that they're the culture that they're set into. So maybe they worked at a company that had a high ego culture, which sometimes works, because you want that internal really deep internal competition, or if it's a hardcore sales company where the sales culture leads, and you know what I mean, it's a different thing. And so maybe they were good there, but they're flexible, and when they switched over to a product-led company like a Facebook or whatever, and then they were able to fit in. So it's just the second part is watching how they assimilate, and I think you can get someone that came from a background or a company that it wasn't like that, and then they switched over.
You can adjust and flex their sort of style as needed. I like it. I always call those people, Swiss Army knives. That's the type of people. I mean, obviously you want people who are flexible, but you also want the specialists. But I do like the Swiss Army knives type of people, because I think they're phenomenal when you can get them. To that point, as you're bringing these people in, you talked about it's a bottoms-up culture, and sort of with sort of the principles in mind in terms of how you make your decisions. You also hinted at delegation earlier, and the best leaders do that. And I would argue, though, that it's a hard skill, right? It takes time. So how have you thought about it? Is that something that you've had to work on it from the beginning, or is that something that came natural to you? Walk us through that, because it's certainly not the easiest thing to do when it's your baby, right?
Absolutely. So for me, it's looking at it as, and I think it's a different situation for when you're becoming a manager versus when you're running a company. I think for me, it was very clear that when I was building, so we went from 0 to 20 people, then 20 to 40, that, at every single stage as a CEO, I had to evolve. And the one good thing that I had done was asked a lot of advice. I constantly am speaking with other CEOs constantly, or other founders who are a few steps ahead, maybe one step, maybe it's 2 steps, but I know are ahead. because you ask them what their biggest problems were. You ask them, what is your role now? And they always tell you, yeah, it took me a while to figure it out. But this is what I was at this stage. And constantly your role changes even as you scale a company, from manager to a director to whatever else. Mm-hmm. It's that, so basically my take on delegation was, I have to delegate or else we're not going to get past a 40-person company successfully. There's no way. And so what does delegation look like? How do you delegate well? Well, you need to hire the correct people first. So how do I do that? And it was breaking down every single decision. So this person needs to know a lot more than me in the given function, because I don't know shit if I'm going to scale this. They need to be a lot, be able to be super smart. They need to fit the culture, but they also need to have references. And so the references were a big part. I got a lot of references. I would say almost anyone we hired had a reference. And sometimes when they didn't have a reference, we'd go by the company that they came from. So if you're coming from a good company that has a recognized
logo,
recruitment culture, and you stand there you're able to stay there for over a year, you weren't kicked out very quickly. To me, sometimes that would mean, okay, it's especially when you're going very, very fast and you can't pick up the reference in time. That was important. So a combination of those, I think you're good. I think this is the one thing that stops people from delegating. I think there's 2 points. I think people know when they hired, like when you hire a strong CMO and you're a software engineering background, I think people tend to not want to delegate to them. Or people want to delegate to them. Naturally, you want to because they're better. But I think it's the loss of control. Loss of control is what scares us all. And I think, or being looked at, it comes down to the low ego. Why I said low ego kills the company. As a CEO, in my opinion, you should be able to always admit you're the CEO, you're the founder. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room. That's not why you got here. You can say, hey, I know nothing about this. I expect you guys to be the experts. And I actually think that's what should be going on in their heads. And that's what should be going on in your head. Because you're giving strategic thought, you're giving strategic vision, but it doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that because you started a startup that suddenly became successful because you found product market fit, that you're also an expert in growth marketing or design UX and etc. You have to trust what you know and trust what you don't know, essentially.
I like it, and I think having that self-awareness, I think, is a critical point. I actually will dive in later because I like that you have a panel. Well, I'll call it a panel, sort of startup founders that you're always getting kind of feedback from. Let's talk a little bit about Hoppin. So you've used the term that video is the oxygen of online connection, and we've talked a little bit about the importance of speed to market, first to market, and winning this market. You guys have made a couple moves recently, acquiring StreamYard, Jam. You just rolled out a new mobile app, I think, the other day. Can you kind of share some of the thinking behind some of these moves and kind of what's getting you excited about the space and where are things headed for Hoppin?
I think future is I think video is the future of communications. I think people want to meet in person. I think we want to. I want to attend my brother's wedding. I want to attend a friend's birthday. I want to have some food in a restaurant. Mm-hmm. But I don't think everybody wants to go in a venture capital meeting and have to fly across the world to do that meeting, and they'd be very happy to do it on a video software. I think people want to attend events, but for the events they can't attend, they would love to take part in an online event, where they still get the same content, they're able to network to some extent, et cetera, et cetera. That's my take. So I think video is the future. And I think that's what led to this. So the StreamYard acquisition is a video production. It brings video production to anybody. Like, you don't have to hire, it traditionally would cost $8,000 plus to pay for even basic video production, for example. And now you're able to get that super easy to use, etc. For less than $29 a month. It's the same thing that with Hoppin. Hoppin is powered by video. So the recent investments, acquisition announcements that we made today with Streamable and Jam, were both video innovation products. Our goal is to start innovating much more in video. So we want the virtual backgrounds, the even AI to improve, have a 320p convert. If someone on a lower internet, basically, almost automatically via AI, push it up to 720p without needing them to be on a better internet. So a lot of this sort of stuff. So I would say, Hossam, I'm extremely bullish, and we're extremely bullish about video as a whole. And so from almost every field of product in regards to video, we see ourselves starting to launch a product there.
Love it. And when we think about the event space, obviously this is an event, and to your point, we're having it globally, 35 countries. There's no way we could have done this in the physical world. It's absolutely not possible. How do you see do you see a hybrid world happening? Do you see a change in the event space occurring? I'm laughing because I think you guys are making a lot of moves in this space. You were on Clubhouse a week ago. I saw you pop into the Good Times. What's your take on all this? Because it's a little bit of a wild, wild west right now, I think.
I think you're right, Hossam. I think it's like a great, I believe that events are, especially when it comes to, so I think summer events are going to be hybrid. And that's why, we're building a lot of tools to allow event to be hybrid. So for example, if you're running a conference that typically takes place in San Jose, California, well, that your user base or the amount of people that actually want to attend are global, and there's a lot more people you can actually get. So I feel like a lot of these events are naturally going to want to be hybrid or completely online. I don't think there's going to be a world where people, especially for the conference industry, where they don't want any interaction from a bigger online audience. It wouldn't make sense from a lead generation. There's actually been some studies before coronavirus on it that said that event organizers or events that had online and offline events were able to attract more people to the offline events. So even if that was your goal to get more people in the offline, hosting online events allows you to do it. And I think right now it's a weird world because it's kind of like meetings. Like the people say that we have meetings fatigue, online meetings fatigue.
Yeah.
I think as soon as we go back to the real world of, it's like the grass is greener. As soon as we go back to there'll be a quick flip so I think all the meetings being online is not great. All the events being online, I don't like it either. But I think that's in the future will definitely be hybrid, in my opinion. Clubhouse is great, just because I know you threw that in. Clubhouse is great. I think it's an audio platform that will really, really do well. As the future of audio social networking, whether it's them or Twitter or whoever else wins in that space.
Yeah,
it's really great.
Love it. A couple more questions, and to the audience that's listening in, I see some questions coming in the chat. So if you have anything else, please drop them in, and we'll start to get to them in a minute or two. I think on the last couple questions here is I'd love to kind of probe your mind on some of the advice that you have. We have a lot of entrepreneurs and founders, operators in the room. Looking back at this entire journey to date, right now at this moment, is there something that you kind of wish you knew at the beginning that you know now? Yes. That would be helpful. That's a resounding confidence.
There's so many things. I wasn't in San Francisco. I was in London, and I had spent a lot of time in, like I said, in Dubai doing startups. I didn't know a single venture capitalist. I didn't even know how it worked. I was sending slide presentations to the amount of, I received maybe 1,000 rejections. Yeah. Because I was spending time sending slide presentations to investors. And I figured out that they don't even actually look at slide presentations. Yeah. And you need to get in through a connection. So what I should have been asking is for meetings or using my network, engineers or companies or people, attending events, meeting someone, and from there getting to someone else. That is the best way. A warm connection to an investor is the number one way to raise financing, not sending slide decks to emails of investors. That's one quick one. A second quick one is when it comes to hiring, when it comes to growing or scaling fast, speed is the number one thing. I didn't know that. It took me about a month too late to do that. I was scared of hiring. You can dial back if you need to, but if you found product market fit, as soon as that happened, as soon as you have product market fit, as soon as you know you have it, you need to pretend the competition or the games have started. Before you found it, I think you can be a little bit smaller of a team. You can really focus on each little UX thing, etc. As soon as you have product market fit, you should be go, 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 go. That's the only way to win, in my opinion. What else is there? If you give me specifics, I can give you 1,000.
Well, let me ask this. So, you got the 1,000 rejections, and now I'm actually imagining you probably get a lot of knocks on your door now. And so, how do you, the inverse is true, like the pendulum has swung. And so, how do you deal with all that, the noise? How do you think about prioritizing? How do you find the right balance? Because probably, people are trying to get a lot of your time.
Yeah. I think it's about prioritizing what you're good at. I'm also not very good at it. I tend to look at everything because I'm a little bit anxious. I want to know everything about a lot of things in terms of product. So I look whenever anyone sends me a product that that they're building, I do look at it immediately. So maybe that's my priority. I love product. It's what I love. My favorite part about Hoppin was building the product, and now building more products. It's exciting. What I would say is prioritizing time is incredibly important. If you know you're not going to like spending time with let's say you grow your team, it's 20 people or it's 30 people, and you have a people person, you have an operations person, maybe you have a legal. If you know you're not going to like doing that, and your best thing is product, then hire people to do the other stuff. I think that's you're doing the company a disservice, and a disservice meaning you're probably going to go slower and not be as successful by pretending to do something because you want the name CEO. Maybe you're a founder that should be product focused, and you maybe keep the name CEO for whatever, but hiring a COO is not a bad idea, if you understand what I mean. I've been totally open it from day one. If we needed a co-CEO for the company because I can't scale as fast as the company, I'm going to put the company first, and I'll hire a co-CEO, or I'll step away. But I think that's something that's incredibly important. So for me, number one thing I like doing is spending time on product. So that's what I prioritize for. I try to move everything else around it. I try and do as little as possible of the things that I'm not good at, and I know I'm not going to put attention to, and I try and give them to people that are a lot better than me.
Love it. Surround yourself with the all-stars and delegate it to those people who are just good at that and enjoy that, to your point. Cool. Let's jump to some of the questions from the audience. The first one I think that came up was something that you alluded to earlier. I think Chef is asking, how did you seek out mentors to help guide your journey? So you talked about that you have this sort of board of advisors of other startup founders that you talk to. One, how do you even find these people? Is it through the network or cold outreach? And then two, how do you take advantage of it? I think we all can do better if we have sort of a board of advisors that you can ping on anything that you have in your career or job or life, frankly. So how have you thought about that?
Yeah, here's my advice on this. And it's a little bit brutal, but honest.
I love it.
You won't be able, it's very difficult to network with people that are 2 steps ahead of you. What I mean by this is, it's very hard for me to call Elon Musk today. We're not at his level. Maybe when we're a $100 billion company, if that was the case, I could call Elon Musk and he'd say, okay, he's worth 10 minutes of my time, if this makes sense, or 30 minutes. And it's not because he's an asshole, for example. He's probably a really nice person, but it's because of the stage of the business and how much time he's spending on different things, that the amount of people that are probably asking him for his time is going to be very, very difficult. So he has to put his company first. And so they need to see some sort of value in the network. Sometimes they will, naturally. If you catch them at an event, for example, an event's a good example. If you catch someone at an event, they'll probably spend more time because you caught them at the event. But just cold emailing, I'm mainly making the point of cold emailing. So building the network needs to be through the various positions that you have. So I'll name it at every stage. So let's do the first one, pre-investment. Building your network pre-investment. I would use, if you know any software engineers that you know that are working for a company that have a CEO that's a smaller stage. So I would be targeting, if I were you, a company that just raised a small round. So why? Because the investors want them to help them find other small companies. And if you know the founder of that small company, or an engineer that can introduce you to the founder, who you can then ask, hey, I have this product, can you take a look at it? I would love an introduction to X. You're more likely to get it, but they're one step ahead of you. So it's that, don't go 3 steps, because if you go to someone who's now maybe raised their Series A, they're less likely to just because of the time. So just someone who just did it. So that's what I would do at that level. And at each level, I would look at the next stage. But once you have investment, it's much easier because a venture capitalist will usually have a portfolio of companies that they'll feel comfortable introducing to other portfolio founders. Yep. And then those portfolio founders, and when it comes to raising money, a lot of them will, again, the venture capitalists will be asking the ones that invested in their future rounds, so for some of these, will be saying, hey, please introduce me to some of the cool companies you like. And it's a good way. And so that's been the best way. The hardest stage, it's like the hardest stage is pre-investment, always. So that's the hardest time. But one good connection. So for Hoppin, it was 1,000 rejections. I met this, and then one of the people that rejected me said, I don't like this. I don't think it's going to do anything, but I'll introduce you to someone who I know, an angel investor who takes more risk, which I didn't know was an insult or excitement. And I was like, but I'll take it. Met the angel investor who then said, this is great, I'll invest, I think it was $25,000. And he said, can you form a round? I said, I don't know any other VCs. He said, let me introduce you to one VC. And that was it. From there, things started opening up.
So stop and build the web, sounds like.
Yeah, the hardest stage is early stage. And if I was doing it again with no network, I would start with events, meeting maybe founders or engineers, even if there's someone at your level, like an engineer, and if you're an engineer or if you're a marketer, that he works for a company, and ask him, hey, can you and the CEO, if they have, even if they're only raised 50K, 100K, 300K, whatever, and then try accelerators as well. But accelerated, I don't think you should ever give them money, in my opinion.
I like it. Okay, last question, because I know we're at time. Hakeem asks, Johnny, what's Hoppin's strategy for MENA? And in particular, are you recruiting in the region? How can we join you?
Hi, Hakeem. That's such a great question. Yes, we are. We have a strategy, which is recently started coming out, which is just like around our events product. We haven't really pushed StreamYard as much, but the events product is now very soon going to be translated to Arabic. It's a little bit complicated, as you guys know, getting everything from right to left. But we're working on it. And we do have actually our 2 salespeople in Dubai working for our team. And so we are now going to start expanding out. And so we have jobs at hoppin.to, which you can apply to. And we'd love to start hiring people.
Awesome. Well, on that note, I think, everyone can check out the Hoppin website. And thank you so much for joining us today and giving us a little bit of your time. And thanks for making this possible. I mean, obviously, it's fun to have Techwadi on Hoppin. It's our first time doing it digitally. We've always done it in the physical world. But it's phenomenal to kind of see some of these theses playing out, and looking forward to what comes next. And we'll be cheering and rooting for you. So thank you again, Johnny.
Hossam, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for inviting me. And it's honestly such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.